The empire that once dominated the world now stood on unsteady legs. Far from its days of glory, the whispers of decline had crescendoed into a deafening roar, and the eternal city, once a symbol of invincibility, awaited a brutal reckoning. Hello, and welcome to Impactful Moments, where we explore some of the most, you guessed it, impactful moments in human history. If history is your thing, or you simply enjoy learning new topics, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us to continue creating captivating, impactful historical content. In this video, we will discuss the sackings of Rome, the brutal moments that shattered an empire. The relationship between the Visigoths, a Germanic tribe likely with origins in southern Sweden, and the Roman Empire was complex. Border skirmishes and raids during the crisis of the 3rd century meshed with partial acceptance and assimilation of the Goths into Roman society once the crisis subsided. By the late 4th century, the Visigoths, seeking refuge from the Huns, requested Roman protection. Emperor Valens allowed them to settle in Thrace, but high taxes and poor treatment soured relations, and the Goths began pillaging the surrounding areas. Valens confronted the Goths, led by King Fritigern, in the 378 Battle of Adrianople, where he severely underestimated their military might. The battle was a debacle for Rome, and Emperor Valens, whose body was never recovered, was likely killed in the battle. In the aftermath, Theodosius I, the new emperor, tried to quell Gothic unrest by offering them land and autonomy within Roman territory in a treaty signed in 382. Many Goths even served as foederati, or barbarian mercenaries, in the Eastern Roman army. However, resentment remained, particularly after fighting for Theodosius against Western Rome at the Battle of the Frigidus River in 394. The Goths, who suffered significant casualties in the battle, felt they were used as human shields for the Roman army and resented the lack of recognition from the Romans. When Theodosius died in 395, the Goths deemed their treaty with the late emperor as null, reinitiating raids across Roman territories. Over the next decade, Western Rome under Emperor Honorius tried to bribe the Goths, led by their new king Alaric, into stopping these raids. However, a series of shifting alliances and broken promises left Gothic trust in Rome hanging by a thread, which was largely brokered by the Roman general and half-Vandal Flavius Stilicho. Stilicho was executed in 408, and Gothic-Roman relations completely fell apart. Alaric and his Goths laid a series of sieges on Rome over the next 2 years, leading to widespread starvation and death within the city. Attempts by the empire to buy peace with exorbitant gifts resulted in temporary reprieves, but failed negotiations for a longer-standing peace brought the parties back to square one. In 410, Alaric once again agreed to meet with Honorius and reach terms. While unclear whether commanded by Honorius, Sarus, a Visigoth who sided with Rome, attacked Alaric. Frustrated by the consistently broken promises and failed negotiations, Alaric cut off communications and once again besieged Rome. On August 24, 410, Rome's Salarian Gate was opened, either by treachery, Visigoths on the inside, or desperation for food, and the Goths stormed the gate. For 3 days, the Visigoths ran rampant through Rome, stripping palaces and government buildings of their golden statues, silver ornaments, and priceless artwork. Homes were ransacked, and citizens fled in terror as their wealth was seized. The magnificent mausoleums of emperors, symbols of Roman power and glory, were desecrated. Statues were toppled, sarcophagi smashed, and the ashes of emperors scattered. This act of symbolic violence served a chilling reminder of the city's vulnerability and the empire's fading grasp on power. While accounts do speak of violence and scattered fires, the sacking wasn't about wanton destruction. Buildings largely remained intact, and, adhering to their Arian Christian beliefs, the Goths respected churches as sanctuaries. Nevertheless, the once invincible city had been breached and humiliated, and the seeds of fear were sown. While the sack of Rome by the Visigoths left the Roman people deeply traumatized, it was just one symptom of a much larger crisis. The Western Roman Empire faced barbarian pressures on all sides. The Visigoths, having breached the imperial borders, were now establishing themselves in Gaul. The Huns launched terrifying raids from the northeast, and the Alans, Suebi, and Vandals had crossed into the empire and migrated westward to the Iberian Peninsula. As the Western Roman Empire struggled to manage these complex relationships with the tribes, shifting between conflict and uneasy alliances, the Vandals, in particular, were steadily rising in power. Under King Gunderic, they had gained significant territory in Iberia, even raising a large naval force, and began raids in North Africa. His successor and half-brother Gaiseric, or Genseric, greatly expanded Vandal territory into Africa, and in 442 signed a monumental treaty with Rome under Emperor Valentinian III, formally recognizing the Vandals as an independent kingdom, a first for barbarian tribes. To further solidify the peace treaty, Valentinian had arranged for his daughter, Eudocia, to be betrothed to Genseric's son, Huneric. This peace with the Vandals, however, was abruptly shattered in 455, before the two could marry. Petronius Maximus, a former powerful Roman senator, had Valentinian assassinated, seizing the throne for himself. This act of violence not only plunged Rome into political turmoil, but also disregarded the marriage pact with the Vandals. Maximus annulled Eudocia's betrothal and forced her to marry his own son, Palladius. Further consolidating his power, he also married Valentinian's widow, Licinia Eudoxia. In hopes of avenging her husband's murder, and possibly as a move to maintain power, Eudoxia secretly appealed to Gaiseric for help, pleading for him to intervene, a request to which he happily obliged. Gaiseric saw the annulment of Huneric's betrothal as a violation of the treaty with Valentinian. With a powerful fleet at his command, Gaiseric launched a surprise attack on Rome. Petronius Maximus, seeing the Vandals' arrival, fled the city in a desperate attempt to escape, but was caught and stoned to death by a mob enraged by the political turmoil and imminent danger to the empire. With Rome leaderless and vulnerable, Pope Leo I met with Gaiseric upon the Vandals' arrival to the city. Though the details of their discussion remains a mystery, historical accounts suggest Pope Leo I pleaded for mercy on behalf of the terrified Roman citizens. As a possible stipulation to Pope Leo's plea, the citizens may have allowed the Vandals open passage into Rome and free rein to do as they please in the city. For 2 brutal weeks, Rome descended into chaos under Vandal control. Unlike the Visigoths before them, the Vandals, with the Roman army absent, enjoyed methodical and unencumbered plunder. Palaces and government buildings were stripped bare of valuables, statues, gold, and even architectural treasures. Homes were ransacked, citizens terrorized. Many historians believe that unlike the Goths, who focused on wealth, the Vandals reveled in the destruction of the city and its monuments, such as stripping the gilt bronze roof tiles from the Temple of Jupiter. The systematic extraction of Rome's riches by the Vandals is generally considered to have been far more devastating than that of the Gothic sack. Rather than the limitation to what they could carry, as was the case with the Goths, the Vandals' massive fleets allowed them to transport far more loot. While the full extent of the damage and the violence remains debated, many claims suggest that, as a possible concession to Pope Leo's pleas, the Vandals largely avoided widespread murder, violence, and arson. Nevertheless, the 2 weeks left an undeniable scar. Once again, Rome had been brought to its knees. It would be a vast understatement to say that the Western Roman Empire was anything but in decline during the twin sackings of Rome. Centuries removed from its pinnacle of power and might, the empire, with its myriad issues, was unrecognizable from its former self. Despite this, the sackings in 410 and 455, the first breaches of the city's walls since Brennus of the Gauls stormed the city in 390 BCE, dealt a shattering blow to the Roman psyche. The once invincible aura surrounding the eternal city vanished, replaced by a deep sense of vulnerability and despair. Fear and a crumbling sense of security permeated Roman society. While some see these occurrences as the beginning of the end for the empire, most historians see these more as a symptom of the already present weakened infrastructure, rather than as a root cause of the precipitous decline. The empire had already been grappling with internal decline for decades, plagued by economic instability and barbarian pressures on its borders. The treatment of Germanic tribes, coupled with a series of disastrous political decisions, undeniably played a role in the lead-up to the sacks. Nevertheless, the plundering of Rome and the erosion of its authority were significant consequences. The population of Rome, once thought to exceed 1 million, may have dropped to as low as 50,000 in the decades following the sacks. The empire's wealth was significantly depleted, and its weakened and thinly spread army was increasingly unable to defend its borders, leading to intensified barbarian raids across the Western Roman Empire over the next decades. The once mighty empire, a mere shadow of its former glory, eventually succumbed in 476, when Odoacer, a barbarian leader, deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus. The sackings, which, as mentioned, were likely symptoms rather than causes of intensifying Roman weakness, tangibly personified the twilight of one of the most influential, powerful, and dominant eras in recorded human history. Much like the closing chapters of an epic story, these events stand as a monumental historical bookmark, an occurrence in history that we can point to, which marks the spectacular collapse of one of history's greatest superpowers. In diametrical opposition to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which tragically sealed Pompey and Herculaneum's fate, yet remarkably preserved a snapshot of Roman life, the sackings of Rome were a devastating act of erasure. Irreplaceable scrolls, breathtaking monuments, and the very heart of Roman culture were ravaged and lost forever, leaving a void that future generations would never get to observe. The second sacking was described in such destructive terms that the word vandal and vandalize in modern vernacular, meaning to deliberately destroy property, was taken from the accounts of the Vandal sacking of Rome. The division between the Western and Eastern empires had begun decades or even centuries earlier, solidifying with the death of Theodosius in 395. The 5th century unrest, symbolized by the sackings of Rome, however, personified a seismic shift. The mantle of Roman power was being relinquished, and the Eastern successor, who would ultimately become the Byzantine Empire, would be the ones to carry the Roman banner for another millennium. The sackings of Rome resonated far beyond the walls of the Eternal City. They were a brutal yet undeniable harbinger of a new world order, one where the West would extinguish after grappling with the shadows of its former glory, and the East would rise as a formidable heir. I hope you enjoyed this video and found this period in history both informative and enlightening. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope you can join us for another video. Thanks for watching.